Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about something in which I have over time changed my philosophy on, particularly for a little more advanced lifters, and that's this idea of actually having days dedicated to mastering big lifts where you are coming in and doing 6, 7, 9, 10 sets on a big barbell movement, some sort of big heavy compound that works a lot of muscles in the body, and focusing on mastering it and creating sufficient workload on that versus the whole concept of body part splits, because I have always been against body part splits, and I'm not saying they can't work. I'm saying they're more suited for people using very heavy doses of various substances. For natties, they're really not ideal. They're always going to produce slower results. And I mean, in the long term, it just seems like they don't even produce the best overall strength, even for guys who are trying to get big. And I'm not really big on that concept. I'm not big on the concept of someone being big and not having a large amount of strength also. Being big and muscular and not having strength is like having a big dick that won't get hard. I think that's the best analogy I've ever heard. But one of the things people have always said with the body part splits, even guys like lobliners, like, well, yeah, but there's a lot of overlap anyways. But there really isn't. And what do we know is that novice lifters really seem to benefit by hitting a muscle group at least 3 times a week. The majority do. More advanced lifters, more and more data is showing that most muscles don't need more than about twice a week direct work in terms of just overall workload. Again, assuming sufficient workload, and I'm not saying very high frequency protocols don't work. There's literature showing that they do, but it's usually with limited volume. And again, we're going into very, very high frequency, stuff like full body 5, 6 days a week. With low volumes, it certainly works. But what we're talking about is more advanced lifters needing to hit a minimum effective volume. You only seem to need to hit that minimum effective volume about twice a week to stimulate maximum growth. Now, people will say, yeah, but there's huge overlap. But there isn't, because you take what a lot of bodybuilders would do. If you take up the current, I hate to say traditional because it's not traditional, it's become traditional because guys have been doing it now long enough that it's become traditional, but it's not what I would have thought of as traditional 20 years ago. Back then it was the new fluff training. Now it's become traditional. Like, they might take a shoulder day, and this is where we're going to break down the difference between having a day to where you focus on standing pressing for an hour versus a shoulder day. A traditional bodybuilder shoulder day, they might come in and do a seated dumbbell press, right? And they don't even use full range of motion. They'll come down and maybe the dumbbells stop at their ears. In other words, a very, very limited range of motion, nothing like we would do with a big barbell movement. Usually on a big barbell movement, we're going to be standing and we're going to touch our chest. Well, there have been enough EMG studies out there showing that overall shoulder girdle recruitment is higher on a standing barbell lift than even sometimes seated. And a lot more muscles get involved, even through the thoracic region. We're not just talking, more core and things like that. No, I mean, a lot of other stabilizers through the back and other places get involved. So they'll come in and they'll do a seated 2/3 rep on a dumbbell press. And then they might do some side laterals and some rear delt flies and some front raises, and they might end up doing about 5 exercises. But people say, well, see, there's a lot of overlap, but there isn't. Their chest didn't get worked really because they stopped short using a dumbbell. They used a partial rep. Well, overhead pressing is supposed to work your chest. That's one of the benefits. It's actually a decent chest builder. Not as good as a bench press or a dumbbell chest press or a dip, but it will build your chest, particularly your upper chest. So they end up getting less stabilizer involvement, no core, no lower body, no mid-back, minimal triceps because they only did a short period of time, some pressing for partial reps, and they focus just on the delts. Whereas if a person comes in and they spend an hour doing standing presses, whether it's a push press or a strict press or whatever, a lot more muscles got involved. In terms of muscles through the body, easily twice as many, if not 3 times as many muscle fibers got recruited. That would give the overlap. When you have people say, well, even the body parts, but there's going to be some overlap. It's not just the delts being worked. But you compare that to coming in and spending the same amount of time focusing on a standing press, a lot of core involvement, back involvement, chest, triceps, and your whole shoulder girdle. That's where it starts to make more sense when people talk about this overlap of it. It's when bodybuilders and other people don't focus on the big movements for the majority of the workout, and they do, a half-ass effort of a compound, and then all this fluff, it doesn't overlap in that degree, and they end up coming to the gym 5 days a week and training an hour and a half, and they still end up with really a lot of the big muscles and a lot of the big movements really get neglected. They don't master anything. They don't come in and focus on movement patterns, and it isn't going to give the same effect people think it is. Yeah, it works really well on a lot of drugs, but natties are really going to find themselves lagging behind doing this, and they're really going to be embarrassed when it comes to any sort of weight being moved by a lot of bigger guys in the gym, because they're not going to build even the solid strength base that you would want doing this. Same thing. Guys will have like a back day, and they'll come in, and you watch their back day, and you compare that to if someone came in and did a deadlift and a few sets of weighted chin-ups, and it's not even comparable. They'll come in and, I'm going to do some rack pulls for my back, which we already know is going to work the posterior chain less, and it's not going to work the back any more than a normal deadlift. And then they'll go over and do a bunch of seated rows and everything else. And then you compare that to someone who, if they want to come in and they want to have a deadlift day, a true deadlift day, the entire posterior chain is going to grow from that. The entire back is going to grow from that, including your lats. There's good data on that. All right, there is definitely enough stress and everything put on other muscles, biceps and stuff like that. There is some stimulation. So what happens if a guy comes in and focuses on that and does a little bit of accessory work, does 2-3 sets of weighted chin-ups behind it? He's worked almost every muscle in his body, very possibly to his minimum effective volume, if not close to their maximum effective volume. There's going to be a tremendous overlap. That is going to carry over to a squat day and everything else. Same thing, you look at guys' leg day, and that's where people really get shorted. They have a leg day. If they do squats at all, sometimes it's a machine squat or a leg press. Machine squat. Sometimes guys will do barbell squats, but you compare that to coming in and squatting for an hour. These guys really think they're going to get bigger quads by doing some leg presses and some leg extensions and coming in and really getting strong on a deep barbell squat? Come on. And then you look at all the other muscles that get worked if they come in and work on a squat, and then pick a little bit of accessory work after. Come in and squat for an hour versus a lot of guys' leg days, and then you compare the total muscle involvement through the body. I think there's a big difference at play, and I don't always buy this argument, well, this 5-day split, every muscle is going to get worked. Well, a lot of them aren't. They really aren't, in the sense of, because these guys are doing so much fluff and pump. They're doing a lot of fluff and pump, but I mean, there is a big difference. If someone comes in and has a whole day dedicated to deadlifting, a whole day dedicated to squatting, a whole day dedicated to overhead pressing, and coming and doing them for an hour, you are going to get a lot more overlap. And then, select your accessory works carefully, because you have put a lot of energy into these big exercises. You can't come in and do a lot of accessory work. Pick the ones wisely that are going to be geared towards your goals, and that's going to give a lot more of that overlap that people want to talk about. When they say, well, their shoulder day still works other muscles, your chest day still works other muscles. But usually not with enough volume, because you've come in and done a few half-ass sets, and most of the time, not always, but at least half the time, guys on these body part splits, even their big compound movement they start with, is oftentimes a minimal effort version. Touch and go, bounce and bench press. Not full range of motion bench press, and then they go on to all their fluff. Same thing, I'll do a rack pull instead of 5 sets of deadlifts. A seated dumbbell shoulder press for half reps. It isn't the same thing, and you're not getting that same carryover through a large number of muscles through your body. Not even close to the same that you would by actually coming in and focusing on a big exercise. And so, no, I don't think they're really the same thing, because that question has come up a lot. Hey, isn't if your person comes in and has a strict press day for an hour and a squat day for an hour, a front squat day for an hour, isn't that a body part split? No, it really isn't, because a lot of these exercises work 50% or more of the muscles in the body, and you're beating on them for an hour while mastering an exercise so that you can increase progressive overload. It's totally different than coming in and doing maybe a half-assed compound or two followed by a bunch of fluff for a body part. A standing press is not a shoulder day. It's still a full body day in a lot of regards. A deadlift day is a full body day in a lot of regards. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.